Friday morning, can't control it. Fired up and counting every minute. Hands are shaking, eyes are burning. The time has come, yeah, this is not a warning. The week was just so long, we had to let it go. Our problems disappeared, we're not tied up anymore. The weekend is here. Sunday calls, we are sick and tired of it. Up and down, can you feel it? Up and down.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the Johansson Show. It's Kurt. Today, joining me is one half of the SHWA Tag Team Champions, Felix Young. Felix, thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me.
Really excited. I said before the show, Alexis Lee, who I interviewed from Singapore, she reached out and was like, you definitely need to speak to this guy. So happy to make it happen. She's going to be happy when I dropped a little graphic on the screen to be like, hey,
Awesome.
look who I've just spoke to. So good that we're keeping her happy.
Yeah, good. She's good people. I got to work with her a few years ago. We'll be on the same show as her, and she's a ball of energy, that one. So
Yeah. Well, whilst we're on the topic, like, what was your experiences working with Alexis when she came over to Australia?
to start with, she was very quiet. She was sort of watching the training seminar when I met her, and she was very focused.
Yeah.
It took about 2 minutes to break that down, and she was one of the loudest people I ever met. Just an absolute ball of energy. Just loves wrestling, and a good person to have in the locker room. Brings the spirits up.
Yeah, definitely. So whilst we're on like the topic of Singapore, is that something you'd be interested in, like going across to Singapore and having a look in the wrestling scene in Southeast Asia?
Yeah, I'd absolutely love to. We've had I've been on shows with like Andrew Tang and Alexis, so I sort of through them got an introduction to the Singapore scene, and then people like Craven from Perth, he's wrestled over there, and everyone who does raves about it. So it's something I definitely want to. When the world opens up again, I'd love to have a crack at.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant. Like, it's a scene that I'm relatively new to, and I've been doing the series where I've been looking in Malaysia and Singapore, Philippines, and I think it's great for that scene, the way it's building up, and I think everybody should be trying to get out there and try and be part of that foundations of trying to build up. If you can, I know it's a lot easier for you to fly to like Singapore and back than it would be, say, for me to fly to Singapore and back due to geography. So it would be quite good to have like that second home for yourself, really.
Yeah, for sure. The scene itself is growing exponentially. Like every time I see a new video, there's bigger crowds. You know, the wrestling's getting awesome. Like Andrew Tang, is one of the trainers over there, and he's phenomenal. So it just builds up to be a scene that I think a lot of people need to get involved in, and I'd definitely love to in the next few years.
Oh, brilliant. So how did it all start for you? When did you think, like, what was your first exposure to professional wrestling?
I used to live next to two tomboys, the girls, and they just loved wrestling. They loved action movies and all that sort of thing. So after school, we would go home and it would be Power Rangers and then Nitro on TV. So we'd watch WCW together, and then on the trampoline, you go out and test all the moves out and things like that. So just pretty much since then, I've been hooked on wrestling.
Fantastic childhood.
Oh yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, especially when you just watch Power Rangers and like, well, they did this in Power Rangers. That might work in professional. Let's go try it.
Exactly right. It's a very dangerous combination. I wouldn't recommend trying things at home, but it's it definitely got the imagination growing.
Yeah, definitely. Who was it that you kind of gravitated towards in with Nitro?
Vampiro and Sting were my first. They just straight away out of the box, two dudes in face paint. They grab your attention straight away. Sting was like my hero for so long.
At this point, was it Surfer Sting?
No, this is
Pro Sting.
Pro Sting, yeah.
Yeah.
Pro Sting. I don't think I would have liked Surfer Sting. He was too clean cut for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, him and Vampiro, and I think they were building up to their like first blood match or the bloodbath sort of thing, and that was awesome.
Yeah, definitely. Had you seen any of Vampiro's like more recent stuff with like Lucha Underground?
Yeah, ever since then I've sort of kept an eye on him wherever he's gone, and his Lucha Underground stuff. His match with Pentagon, for example, I thought was phenomenal, especially with his age and his health. He's doing amazing work.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it was just a storytelling as well, like building up to it. I just thought that was absolutely
100%.
fantastic. What part of wrestling do you prefer? Do you prefer the the physical aspect of it, or do you prefer to have that storytelling involved?
I'm a bit of a weird one because I like a huge variety of it all. I can watch Lucha Libre all day long because the athleticism is just incredible. I am a huge fan of deathmatch wrestling. I think that's just a whole other animal. Story wrestling, things that have a massive arc and a journey. I love that. If you can have a journey over 6 months or even over 8 minutes, it's just wonderful to see. And then I also love New Japan. I love watching two dudes just knock the absolute crap out of each other. So I think I just like wrestling. I like all forms of it. Yeah, exactly right. I saw something recently from I think it was Joey Janela's Spring Break. Someone complained that comedy wrestling has no place, and I think it does as much as any other kind. So I think wrestling is wrestling, whether it's good or it's bad, So
yeah, definitely. And I think it's a lot of the time it's a good break in the show. I remember watching Sendai Girls. They came over to the UK. And I think in the main event we had like Tony Storm versus Meiko Satomura, and that was the kind of theme of the show. But on one of the matches we had Aiga, who's practically like a possessed ghost out of what is it? Like The Ring or something like that. Like the girl with the black hair and come running at you and stuff. And she was against Session Moth Martina, and
brilliant.
Martina runs out and she's chasing, and they're literally just running around behind the curtain, in front of the curtain, behind the curtain, in front of the curtain. And then it's the opposite way, and she's running out with a Hoover, and the Ghostbusters theme starts playing. And it was as if she was trying to Hoover the ghost up. And on a show where you're expecting like serious wrestling, like it's Sendai Girls, it's under Meiko Satomura, but everybody just appreciated because it was done right and it wasn't too forced, and it was a good break in the show, and then it allows you to appreciate what comes after with the seriousness as well.
Exactly right. If you had a whole card of Meiko Satomura kicking through someone, by the end of it, you've seen it all. It's been done. So to have that, like you said, that comedy breakup, especially when it's done well, and Session Moth Martina is one of the best comedy wrestlers at the moment, from my opinion.
Yeah.
To have that break is it's so valuable to a structure of a card, to a 3-hour performance,
Yeah. No, I 100% agree. So when was the first point you thought, right, I'm giving my parents a heart attack because I'm trying it at home like I'm not supposed to. I better go try and do it properly. So when did you try and like have a look at schools and start training?
So I didn't really know there was wrestling in Perth. So I'm from Perth, Western Australia, and I didn't know there was wrestling at all for a long time. So me and my friends had our own backyard company, and we did that for probably way too long. And then I found a show. My friend won tickets on the radio to a show. So then he went and he wouldn't stop talking about it. He'd brag he went and saw wrestling before us. So we all got in the car and tripped out to it. And from there we found out there was, I think, 3 promotions at the time, maybe 4 in Perth. We didn't know. So then it was, let's try them all. Let's start going to all of them. And just a mutual friend from inline at one of the wrestling shows was like, oh, I referee at another company. And she come have a look. And I spoke to the guy there, and then I think I was ring crew for 9 months, and then once I turned 16, I was training.
What year was this?
I think I started training the December 29th, 2009, the day after my 16th birthday.
So wasted no time.
No, I was actually at the training before my birthday, and they wouldn't let me in the ring, and I was just itching. So I had to wait the extra 2 days, and then I got in. So
brilliant. So what was your first experience of training under a proper school? Like you mentioned, you did your backyard stuff, but now there might be a little bit more structure, and you've got people telling you what to do, and essentially sometimes retraining you. What was that like for you?
Good and bad. Wonderful because I love professional wrestling. So to learn like, oh, that's maybe how to protect yourself, or maybe we should do things this way instead of however we sort of made up at home. But then there was the shock of fitness. I wasn't prepared for the fitness level, and I got absolutely slammed on that. The warm ups, the cardio, that was just death for so long. But it gets used to it, and you start picking up your fitness levels and things like that. But yeah, that was the biggest shocker.
Yeah. When you was doing your backyard stuff, what was you using? Did you have your own ring?
Oh no. We started on mattresses. We started on grass actually, and that was terrible. And then it was mattresses, maybe a trampoline, And then eventually we found a thing called a base, which is when you put a whole bunch of tires out, some wood, some padding, and you make a ring without ropes. And that was, we ended on that, and that was probably the safest thing we could have been on, but I still wouldn't recommend it.
So how was it adapting to an actual ring?
Being surrounded by ropes was really bizarre because we hadn't done it ever. But no, wonderful. Like a duck to water with that sort of stuff. It was very exciting. But everything was so much bigger. So like there was more surface area. The ropes were higher. I was quite short when I started. And all the guys obviously are, some of the guys from their 30s when I started training and I was 16. So everyone is so much bigger. I was the heavyweight of backyarding and now I'm the junior heavyweight in training, So that was a big hurdle to climb as well.
Yeah. So did you have to kind of adjust the way you wrestled as opposed to what you was doing in your backyard?
Oh, day and night, yeah. Went from being the only kid who could lift anyone to definitely the dummy, the test dummy.
The kid that couldn't lift anybody.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, my entire style changed. My perspective on wrestling changed as well with that.
So how long had you been training officially until you had your first match?
So I travelled across to Victoria, the other side of the country, for just a family holiday, and there was a company there, and they were comfortable to put me on a show. I think I'd been training 3 or 4 months, so not super long. And I did a show there in front of 12 people in a shed. And then I came back and I trained a lot longer, and then I got on a show here. So I think overall 6 months.
Yeah.
But the first match was probably 3 or 4.
And that was with SHWA, wasn't it?
Yeah, in Perth it was, yeah.
Yeah. So what was it like having your debut, not in a shed in front of the 12 people, but for the company you've been training with for all this time?
A lot of pressure. And not from the guys, from myself, I think, because it was the first time my parents asked me to wrestle in proper gear, with proper lighting, proper sound, proper everything, big show feel.
Yeah.
So I put a lot of pressure on myself to perform. And that was, I'm not sure it was the right thing to do to myself. I probably should have understood it's your first one, it can't be perfect, but yeah.
Yeah. How did you feel it went?
As good as it could. I was put in a role of I think a 6-minute squash situation.
Yeah.
So it wasn't, I didn't get to do a whole lot. I just sort of got beat up a lot, but that I think made it a lot easier for me to get comfortable in being in front of an audience.
Yeah. So obviously SHWA is your home, but you've been wrestling a few different places. When did you start branching out?
So I'm not sure how it works in the UK between companies, but particularly in Perth, the companies when I started, they didn't really talk. It wasn't like territories, but it was just of the unspoken rule of you can come to my show and watch, but I'm not going to use your guys. We use the guys from our school.
Yeah.
And that always bothered me. So I was trying to talk to the people who ran my company. I was like, can we please just talk to them? Can I go across? And it didn't really work out. So it took maybe 2 or 3 years until eventually 2 companies sort of had to talk properly and went, oh, maybe we'll have a look at your guys.
Yeah.
And then I was hoping I'd be on the first wave of that, and I wasn't. My trainers got picked up before me, and probably the guys who deserved it. A little bit long down the track, I got picked up, and then the mixing around started to happen, and everyone wrestled everywhere. It was awesome.
Who was the company that you mixed with?
So New Horizons Professional Wrestling. They we used to have a working agreement with them years ago. Or SHWA did before my time. That fell through, and then it sort of rebuilt slowly to the point where they were taking guys from us, and our guys got a bit more experience with their guys, which was really cool. From there, All Action Wrestling opened up. Sort of their doors a little bit, and then from there Explosive Pro Wrestling also opened up a little bit, and eventually you could almost find someone from every company on a different show every other weekend, and that was really cool for growth, particularly for the younger guys.
Yeah, definitely. And do you think it's like these companies letting down their guard, their barriers, and thinking actually, we won't be as precious, we will look at your guys as well, you can look at our guys? Do you think that's what's helped the Australian scene grow so much?
I think it helped the Perth scene a lot.
Yeah.
I can't speak too much on the other parts of the country. I know Melbourne, for example, they had schools independent of companies, so it wasn't like this company's school. So I think they got to use a lot of guys. The best guys got the most work, which is phenomenal. I know Adelaide are starting to break down some barriers now, and they're starting to move around. So South Australia, and same with Queensland, they're all moving around. But I know in Perth particularly, it helped the guys tenfold.
Yeah. Are you wanting to travel around Australia, or are you just happy within the Perth scene?
I've done a little bit of traveling. So I've wrestled in South Australia, in Queensland, New South Wales, and Melbourne,
Yeah.
in Victoria. Sorry, but I want to do more. We're so isolated in Perth.
Yeah.
I think we are the most isolated main city in the world, something like that.
Oh,
So
wow.
it becomes very tricky to get around. So flights are very expensive, or driving to anywhere else takes 2 days. So
Wow.
that becomes quite difficult. But I do want to do more of it.
Yeah. What was your first experiences like wrestling outside of Perth then? Because again, different. Essentially, it's a different territory, so it might be people that aren't familiar with your work, it's new guys to work with, new audiences. What was that like, and what companies was you with?
It's very jarring to be very confident in your little box and then go somewhere else and realize, oh, maybe I don't hit all the points well, or maybe this audience doesn't know that I've been on this journey for however long. So
Yeah.
that was quite tricky. But I was lucky enough that my debut match was interstate,
Yeah.
technically, I guess. So from there, I went back and worked that promotion again. That was Slam Factory in Victoria. And then I went to Pro Wrestling South Australia, I believe, in South Australia, and that was really good. At that point, I was the SHWA champion, so I got to defend the title there, which was very cool for that to
Yeah.
happen. It gives us a little bit of exposure, and it helped me put a nice pressure on myself that not only do I have to perform, I have to do the home company proud.
Yeah.
And then I got to wrestle through Wrestling Go in Sydney, New Valhalla in Queensland, and I did a like a festival sort of show for Melbourne City Wrestling. And
Okay.
that's really, really cool because they're a real
Yeah.
big promotion. So
Is MCW somewhere you'd like to try and work more, say 2021?
definitely, I think MCW is a lot of people's goals. Them and PWA are probably the
Yeah.
two most prominent away from home. EPW is pretty prominent here as well.
Yeah.
Um, MCW, I'd love to go there and wrestle. I got to wrestle one of their guys, Richie Taylor, on a SHWA show last year, and he just beat the absolute crap out of each other. We're very much cut from the same cloth with the way we wrestle, so I'd love to wrestle at MCW against him. I think that'd be pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, but you mentioned it earlier, so SHWA champion. I believe you've had two reigns. What was it like being able to, again, when you came in, you're like, please let me go wrestle somewhere else. Please let me go wrestle somewhere else. Then, say 7, 8 years down the line, you're not only wrestling somewhere else, but you're defending their title on a different show. Like, how did that feel? Was you the first person to do that as well?
No, I wasn't. So my trainer, Jared Slate, he defended it in PWSA as well. So he's been to Adelaide and defended it
Yeah.
there, and it's something that I wanted to do since I saw him do it. I thought that's to be not only the representing the company, but to do it interstate
Yeah.
and defend that title. That's such a cool thing. It's a huge honor to have. So when I saw him do that, that's what I really wanted to work towards. Winning the title was something that was really, really bizarre. Because everyone works to win the title in their main company or to
Yeah.
be the flag bearer, and it's something that I wanted for so long. And we have a mid-year medal, and it's essentially like the Money in the Bank. You win a Rumble, you can cash in and get a title match whenever, and that's what I was able to do. And I won it at our biggest show of the year, Ascension. So that was a really, really cool moment, and my family was there. So you can't ask much more than that.
Yeah. So you mentioned Jared Slade. Was he your trainer?
Yes,
Yeah. And now he's your tag team partner.
tag team partner. Even got the brand new shirt on. Wrestlermerch.com. Search for Felix Young.
That is
Cheap plug.
brilliant. What
Um,
inspired that t-shirt?
it's a Simpsons design. It's a Bone Storm, the
Huh?
video game from The Simpsons. So thought I'd grab that and have a play with it.
What was what was it like getting to team with him then? Like he's the person that's helped train you, and now you've had a couple of title reigns, and now you're tag team champions with him.
So it's interesting. When I started training, I didn't like him at all. He was very mean to me, beat me up a lot, still does, but we weren't we're different people when I started. So for the longest time, I wasn't too interested in dealing with him. I gravitated to other people. And then after a while, people would come and go, but me and him sort of stayed the same, and we were always there. And I think that mutual respect of working hard and sticking with it, and I think we grew closer because of that. So we teamed briefly in a group called the Shadows of Alistair. It was a large group controlled by sort of a mythical group controlled by a spirit, and it was a bit out there. But he left the group sort of as I came in. We maybe teamed once.
Yeah.
We then teamed again in a group called the Pulse. And unfortunately, I think 2 months into the Pulse, he tore his PCL, something like that, and he was just gone for a year. So we didn't get to do that. So this is our third attempt at teaming, and it's going much better this time. So
you've managed to get merch together, so it's going well.
Well, that's me locking it in. I thought if we get a T-shirt, it can't go away anytime soon. And we had the opportunity to do a regional show in Kalgoorlie, which I think is a 6-hour drive from where we are. It's a mining town that doesn't get a whole lot of events or things up there. And we headlined that show in a cage match and won the tag titles, and that's pretty cool. So
wow.
That's a pretty cool moment to have, and yeah.
Was that your first cage match, or had you been in a cage before?
That's my second. I've been in one of the promotions did a all cage event similar to a lockdown. So we were in the opener, me and Delcano. We had a 6-minute cage match, I think. Yeah. So if you want to count that, it's kind of there, but yeah. This is our first proper.
What's your thoughts on cage matches then, like especially being inside one yourself?
Everyone talks about it and they say once you're locked in, it's spooky, or it changes you. And I sort of laughed at that a lot. And then when I was in there, I was like, oh, it really ups the intensity suddenly. It does feel kind of like there's a weird pressure.
Yeah.
It becomes more of a fight. And, I don't know if it's just the people I've worked with, but you feel that. Everyone starts hitting harder and going faster. And it's a weird intensity to it. But I love cage matches. It's a whole other dynamic on wrestling, especially if there's escape rules or if there's no escape or barbed wire tops, whatever you're going to do with it. I think it just adds such a cool element to what we do.
Yeah, I've got to agree. What other match types have you enjoyed when you've been in? I know you've had some like fatal four-way ladder matches and street fights. So what are some of your favourite non-traditional wrestling style? Like you mentioned earlier, you're a big fan of this deathmatch hardcore wrestling. Like, yeah. So do you enjoy being able to do that yourself?
I've never had what I would consider a deathmatch before, just because of the promotions in Perth. That's maybe not their thing. A few of them are family friendly or whatever. But I love hardcore wrestling. Street fights are probably my favorite match type of all time. Yeah. I was All Action Wrestling No Limits champion for 657 days, which is sort of their hardcore title. So for like, I think it's just over something like that of 2 years, I got to do nothing but hardcore matches, and that actually led me to have a match with Sabu. So things like that becomes that was my favorite for a long time, and yeah, I really, really miss doing that.
Yeah, but what was it like when you got told you was going to be working Sabu then?
Oh, I crapped myself. I've never wrestled international wrestler before. I've wrestled interstate and things like that, but never someone from another country.
Yeah.
So that was it felt like a lot of faith on me, but also then I realized, Sabu does some pretty crazy things, and I have to live up to that now. So it was pretty full on the thought of, but at the same time, very exciting.
Yeah, I can only imagine. Like, what was it like then when you actually stand? 'Cause one thing is knowing it's going to be happening, a bit like the cage match, like, oh yeah, it'll be fine. But then when you're in it, it's, oh shit. What was that like with Sabu then? Because again, it's one thing, yep, I'm going to be wrestling Sabu, but then when you actually stood across the ring, Sabu's there, he's allowed to use his weapons.
Most daunting things was sort of the venue was being set up, and I was there just standing around with some friends. And then he walks in with his suitcase and he sort of walks off to his locker room, and my brain just went like, oh no, it's happening. Like, I have to do this now. You can't.
You're so
run away. Yeah, and it was so that was kind of wild. But then once my song hit, I was so confident in what I'd done with AEW up to that point. It was just a match, and being able to be in the ring watching Sabu make his entrance is pretty cool. And then, circling to tie up, my brain did a little bit of, oh man, that's a big deal. But at the same time, I just went, it's just wrestling, just wrestle. So, um, yeah, daunting, but I think I controlled it quite well. I was pretty proud of myself.
Yeah. So obviously, like hardcore street fights, they can get a bit carried away. So like thinking back as your time as like the No Limits champion, is there any matches where you think we probably went a little bit too on there, or like a little bit too extreme?
Not with the No Limits title. I think with that one, I was very careful with what we did.
Yeah.
In the sense that it was still a family-friendly show overall, so there was no huge blood and guts. It was always very controlled, hardcore wrestling.
Yeah.
Probably the only thing that was pushing the limit was I wrestled Ricky South from PWA, and he pulled out a drill, and that got quite close to my head. So other than that, I think we kept the boundaries pretty good, but a drill's probably as far as I took that one.
So when thinking back, like I said, you've had the SHWA Championship twice. What are your favourite moments during that time, and like some of the matches that stand out? And when you think back, I was like, actually, I'm proud I've done that. Like you said, it's your home promotion, and you strive to be the champion, and you've been a 2-time champ.
Some of my things I really wanted to do in wrestling was have a ladder match. It's something I'm a huge Jeff Hardy fan since I was very little. So to have a ladder match and to do something fun like that was sort of that's definitely a goal. So when I got to won the title, and then we ended up with 3 different contenders, it just seemed to work. And we had a 4-way ladder match, as you mentioned earlier, and that was to be sitting on top of a ladder holding up your title is pretty special. That just sort of sat with me for a long time. But also, we had a TLC match where it was myself and Slate sort of teaming together while I was champion, and things like that were always stick out to me. Just the real the trust from people to have, put into a match like a tables, ladders, and chairs match.
Yeah,
it's pretty special.
So again, want to try and do a spotlight essentially on especially the Perth Australian scene. Who else the opponents were you get told you're going to be working with, and you're like, this is going to be good. I enjoy working this person.
Well, that's tough. There's a fair few of them, really. A few guys from SHWA particularly. Axton is a guy that I really enjoy working with. He's a big post-apocalyptic monster, and he's he's come from a football background, and he's the way he moves and his confidence in carrying himself out is really awesome. I've wrestled Del Cano, I would near say 50 times, and he's always fun. He's someone I was backyarding with, so to be able to translate that to actually professional wrestling, that's pretty special.
Yeah.
I love wrestling Jared Slate. I can't talk about how underrated he is in the country, I'm glad I'm teaming with him because he hits like a brick every time, just as hard as he can. But yeah, the 3 guys sort of from SHWA, I suppose Delcano's EPW now, but those sort of guys, people like the Don, Michael Morleone, he's been around for so long, and he's so good at whatever he does. Whatever he puts his mind to in wrestling, it seems to work. So people like that, I get really excited. And some of the younger guys, there's a guy called the Great George, who is a world of sport fanatic, I guess. Okay. So he watches all the old all the old matches, and he can tell me about Johnny Saint's match on whatever date and whoever he beat and things like that. So he also trains with me under our lucha coach Mazdek, who's been wrestling for 30-something years through Mexico, and he mixes those 2 styles. That's incredible. To see someone go from chain wrestling to high flying just back to back to back is just awesome. So people like that I get excited to work with too, the younger guys.
Yeah, and who was that one again? Sorry.
The Great George.
Great George. Okay. Very interesting. It seems like I reckon both of you should just pack your bags, come to the UK for a little bit, and show us what.
I'd absolutely love to. The UK is something there was maybe a boom 2 or 3 years ago where the UK was the only place to wrestle, and then a whole bunch of Australians came over, between Kyle Fletcher, Mark Davis, Rufio, come over, and they took off, So it's very tempting for, I think, all Australian talent to look across and go, should we make the jump? You know, so I think
Yeah,
it's something we definitely want to do in the future.
yeah. Obviously, Mark Davis, Carl Fletcher, like what they've done since coming over has been like fantastic. Who was it? I watched it when New Japan came over and did their own traditional show. Normally they do joint shows with Rev Pro, but they was doing Queen's Quest, and those two in particular was on that facing Tamatonga and Tangaloa, which
Oh
like
yeah,
Destiny, which again was quite surreal. And I think, bearing in mind they're not from the UK, they had one of the best atmospheres that I've probably ever witnessed. To the point where Gorillas of Destiny was like, "What the hell?" They thought we'd get a little bit more cheers here, and the whole place is just erupting. And is it something you've looked into at all?
I have. It's just to do it properly. I think you have to commit to a move for at least a year or so. I think to really break in and to get that opportunity. But it's just with my family and things here, it becomes very difficult to leave for that period of time.
Yeah.
I would like to do a shorter stint at some point, a couple of months, but that's not at the moment, obviously. But
Yeah.
once all the borders lift and things become a bit safer, maybe that's something I'll look into for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Is there any companies in particular that have stood out where you'd be like, I want to go there, or is it just the UK in general?
I look the UK in general, but places like Rev Pro always seem to have amazing wrestling. Attack
Yeah.
is somewhere I've been very fond of for a long time. Progress obviously would be phenomenal, but that's I would say close to the peak of British wrestling. So yeah, I don't know. I'm just happy to get across and to wrestle a few different guys and just learn the style. Training's probably the biggest thing I'd be excited to do,
Yeah.
just to get a different mindset, different eye, different ability from people who practice different styles and things like that. I think it would be awesome.
No, I'm glad you said that as well. I think especially some of the people that are training, especially up here in like the north of England where I'm based, is the likes of Dean Allmark and Rampage Brown, which they're two of the best in the world. I don't care. Like
Dean
Rampage,
Allmark's someone I've followed for a long time. He's that is like a weird dream match of mine. I have a few people who you wouldn't consider dream matches, but I'd love to work with Dean Allmark.
yeah.
Yeah.
It should like 'cause Dean works a lot with like All Star Wrestling. Have you heard of All Star at all?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Yeah. Because you mentioned like the starter stints and stuff like that, and everybody that I've spoken to recently, I've been interviewing quite a few of the like mainstays on that scene. They just say like they go on the shows and they come back a different person because when you're wrestling Dean Allmark 5 days in a row, like there's no way you can get better.
For sure.
And obviously they just do like different summer camps or different like school holidays and stuff like that. So if it was like a shorter stint, might be worth having a look into that and reaching out to Brian Dixon because again, like Brian Danielson's come across, Chris Jericho's come across, Dash Wilder, he's been over as well. Well, Cash Wheeler now. So many people from around the world come over for these camps just because I think it's the experience as well, like traveling around the UK with the boys and stuff like that. So definitely recommend it for you.
There's nothing sort of. There's only one sort of place that does sort of touring shows like that in Australia, and I haven't done those before. But the camps is something such a bizarre concept to me, and I really would love to have a crack at it.
Yeah.
We did a seminar with Saraya Knight, and she was explaining sort of the camp system and how it works, and it seems so foreign, but it's something like a coolest idea. So that's definitely something I'd love to do.
Yeah, it's because obviously, for those in Australia that may not be aware of it, with these camp shows, they're not wrestling fans. There may be wrestling fans in the audience, but these are companies that are paid by different holiday venues to go travel to these different holiday camps and provide tonight's entertainment. So it can be very testing, but you can try new stuff. And if you can get a reaction out of these people that aren't wrestling fans, then you can get a reaction out of anybody.
It just seems like a really cool experience to try and to see what works and what doesn't
Yeah.
with like you said with non-wrestling fans. If you can get a reaction out of them, I think you're set. And then to be able to build on that and build on that skill of getting to know someone's ability and working with them back to back to back, I think that'd be pretty awesome.
Yeah, definitely. So what other goals do you have in wrestling? I know we mentioned like Singapore, we mentioned coming over to the UK. Like once again the world goes back I know you're doing some shows in Australia at the moment, which we'll get to shortly. But what are your other goals in wrestling?
A really big one for me is I'd love to wrestle in Mexico. Training with Mazdek, who's, like I said, he's been doing this 30-something years. Just the different style, the respect level, the ability of the people there. That is something so cool to me, and I'd love to do. Australian Suicide's a guy from Victoria who now makes a living out of AAA, and I'd love to be able to go over there and just do some of that sort of stuff. Some of the stories he has is incredible, so
Yeah.
I think that'd be phenomenal.
Yeah, is that your ultimate goal then, Mexico?
Look, I'd love to do everywhere. I'd love to wrestle in the US. I'd love to do a stint through. Japan just seems such a crazy, like Mexico and Japan, both for the same reason. It's a culture shock, and the wrestling is so respected and so idolized there. I think if you can do well in those places, you can generally do well anywhere. And again, the training of both. Training is something to me that's so underrated, and people don't put enough emphasis on it. If you are working hard at training, you are getting new skills every time you're in there. You don't get worse if you're training. And that's something that I'll always argue. So I'd love to train in Japan and Mexico. Even if I don't wrestle on shows, just to train in those places would be phenomenal, I think.
Yeah, definitely. We've seen a lot of people from Australia or even New Zealand get signed to WWE recently, go to NXT. Is that something you look at and think, I wouldn't mind that, or is Japan and Mexico your preferences?
Look, I think everyone would love to go to WWE, whether they want to admit it or not. I actually had this conversation with a group of trainees last night. They sort of asked, would you like to do it? I'd love to, but I don't think I don't think I'm for them, and I don't think they're for me, really. Yeah, if they throw me a contract, I'll sign it, sure. But I just don't think that's going to be the way it goes. So I'm happy wrestling in the Australian level. I would love to wrestle internationally. That's, I think, would be if I do that, I'm pretty stoked with everything I've done.
Yeah. Well, we've seen WWE branch out. We've got NXT UK here, where they look into the different European territories as well. They bring people from Russia, Austria, Spain, France, Italy, Germany, all over. And there's always the rumours of NXT Japan, and they've been doing tryouts in Singapore for people from Malaysia, Philippines, Vietnam, and places like that. What if they went to do NXT Australia? Do you think that's something that could happen? Like, you've had a couple of big shows in Australia recently, and it's proven successful with the amount of Australian talent that's been signed by WWE in the recent years. Could you foresee an NXT Australia?
When I started at 16, not one person you knew had ever wrestled WWE. That was like so far ahead of everyone.
Yeah.
It wasn't like we're not even a blip on the radar. Now I have friends that work there. I've been on shows with people who work there. That's unreal to me.
Yeah.
So how much the world's shrunk in that sense is incredible. And you always hear rumors of, maybe it's going to be like Australasia, and it's going to be, it'll encompass Singapore, Malaysia, etc. But it's going to be based in Melbourne or Sydney, or you always hear chatter. But I don't see it happening anytime directly, because I think Japan would need to be first for them, and possibly even India. I think is probably a bigger market, but if they do, I would love it. There's so many talented men and women in Australian professional wrestling. It's unreal.
Yeah.
And I think some people are starting to notice. I know, like MCW and PWA, for example, again are reaching out, and they're getting further exposure, and that's helpful from Will Ospreay's trips here. But I think the whole country is ready for another boom just to go again. So if they want to put the NXT here, I think they'd pick up some incredible wrestlers.
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned trainees earlier, so are you now training some wrestlers yourself?
I have done before, not so much at the moment. I was sort of working on more myself again, but it's. I always find it really important to show your face and to get to know the younger guys, because they're the guys who you're gonna be working with in the future. And I know when I was coming through, the older guys who didn't give the younger talent time, that always bothered me. I'd rather just be a good person and know everybody, and just make it sort of just try and make it as a best environment as possible for everyone.
Yeah. So how does it feel that now, essentially, you're the role model to them? You're the person they look to and essentially aspire to be in the Perth wrestling scene.
That's very hard for me to swallow, really. Because I started so young, I was the youngest for a long time.
Yeah.
And now I'm 26, almost 27, and there are people who come in and, the other day they were talking about they said, "Oh, what's a Nintendo 64 like?" And I said, well, "What do you mean? How old are you?" And they go, "Oh, I'm 20," and I almost fell off my chair. Like, it's only 6 years difference, but I'm not the youngest anymore, and that's really bizarre to me. So when people say like, "Oh, it was really, I'm really excited to work with you," I'm kind of like, it doesn't feel real. It doesn't feel
Yeah.
right to me. It's exciting because it's cool that I got the level that the people I looked up to or whatnot. But yeah, it's very different.
I'm just shocked I've not played a 64.
There's plenty
Um,
of things like that that
yeah.
go around that just blow my mind.
I think it was probably our um like our generation with you being 26, I'm 27. I just feel like we still played the older game consoles. So
Definitely,
despite there being the PlayStation 1s out and stuff, I was still playing 64s or the SNES or the Sega Mega Drive.
100%. Yeah.
And I don't think these days it's either the newest console or nothing. And they're missing out on so many good games.
So my little brother is 12 years old, so there's quite an age gap, and he will only play the newest, the best, the brightest, the fastest. We watched a movie, and he goes, "Oh, I'm not sure the plot line is quite to my taste," and I was just like, the gap in what we care about, what we look for, is so different.
Yeah.
If a game was fun, I didn't care if the heads were square or if the guns were shooting pixels. That's wonderful to me.
Yeah.
But now he plays Call of Duty, and it has to be on high definition and things like that. So. I don't know. I think that's just the advancement in technology as well has come so far that people are, yeah, kids don't really want to go backwards. They want to go forwards. Whereas, like you said, I play every system. A game's a game. As long as it's fun, I'm happy to have a crack. So,
Exactly. I think it was still 27, but only a couple of years ago, I think my mum had for Christmas she bought me one of the mini Sega Mega Drives, and I felt like a kid again. I was like, get in, and the fiance's family was like, what's that? Like, not really. They weren't really gamers, and I was just like, something I played about 20 years ago, and I can play it
yeah.
again. I was so happy.
Yeah, we recently got a Switch, and everyone's talking about all the new games, and I just use the online pass to play all the old games. I've
Yeah.
just finished Donkey Kong Country, like that's that's my game. So,
Yeah, definitely. Whether it's Donkey Kong or the older Mario's, I prefer, and even the
yeah.
older Pokemon games, I think they're just so much better than all the new ones. And I don't care about the graphics; it's so much better. I think it's that nostalgia, and Zelda as well is a big thing.
Yeah, for sure.
So moving on, I mentioned, you've started wrestling again in Australia. What's
Mhm.
that been like during the pandemic? And again, you're having reduced crowds, I believe. So what's that like? Where what's your average crowd before pandemic, and what are you getting at the moment because of it?
Look, crowds can range between 80 and 400 across the
Yeah.
three different companies now. It depends on the night, the weather, the football, all that kind of stuff
Yeah.
really plays a factor. Um, and through the pandemic, we weren't doing any training, obviously. We really cut down. So we're doing a lot of online training, and then we started doing non-contact training. So we could go and do all the cardio and things like that.
Yeah.
We couldn't, you couldn't tie up. So it was a lot of discussions and things like that, and broke into actual training. And now it's to a point where we have like a 2 square meter rule. So, a person in the building, one person for every 2 square meters. So
Yeah.
it halves the capacity. So I think with wrestlers in the room, we can have like 15 fans at the shows I've been on, and that's so different. 15 fans is so hard, especially in a shed. Again, we're in a training school, so um, it's such a different experience. It's worth it because for the first time in 8 months, I got to wrestle.
Yeah.
And that's the longest break I've ever had. So I think that's for the majority of people through COVID will tell you that's the longest break they've ever had, for good or worse. Um, so 15 people, some people put their nose up to it. It's exciting. It's 15 people who haven't seen wrestling in 8 months. I haven't wrestled in 8 months. So, the combination of that's just, let's go. Let's get out there and, hammer it out.
What's the audience been like? Have they been really excited and energetic, or are they restricted to no shouting? Or
No, so we have no restrictions on them other than like distancing. The chairs are spread out. We just can't high five. We're still cautious. Australia's been particularly Perth has been quite good at minimalising COVID. Like you don't see many masks down the street anymore because you don't really need to in Perth. So we're pretty liberal with that sort of thing. The first couple of shows, the crowd's just been awesome.
yeah,
There's been one or two where they sit on their hands a little bit, but I think it's also they're relearning wrestling. Like a lot of these crowds they haven't seen it in a long time, or they haven't seen these people in a long time, so they're just refreshing themselves. Perth, particularly, I find the fans watch the shows. They really study what's going on. Places like Sydney, they clap and chant and sing, and they really get into it in a different way.
yeah.
Perth fans I'm not saying they're better or worse, they're just so focused on what's happening. Maybe they won't chant because they're really concentrating, and that's just a different element again,
Yeah, it seems like the Perth fans are more like Japan, and like Sydney
Yeah,
more like the UK.
that's definitely the way I describe it to people as well. And Melbourne, again, they have that sort of UK fans where they get rowdy and things like that. For the most part, they are so intent on watching and understanding. It's really interesting how different states have different audiences like that. But yeah.
Oh, brilliant. So if there is, like you mentioned, you've wrestled Sabu, but whether it's on your travels or bring them into any of the companies you're working for in Perth, is there anybody on that list that you're wanting to get in the ring with where you're like, man, 2021, this needs to happen?
Like I said, I have a few like weird dream matches. So I don't want to wrestle The Rock. I couldn't really care about wrestling Hulk Hogan, but Dean Ormark would be phenomenal.
Yeah.
He's a guy that not enough people are talking about. And another one, I'm huge on intergender wrestling. I think is phenomenal, and I think it should be more widely accepted than it is.
Yes.
So another dream match that I haven't really spoken about a whole lot is Lufisto from Canada. I'd love to wrestle her before she finishes up. Her style, her presence, all that is just phenomenal. So that's definitely someone I'd like to work with as well.
Oh, brilliant. Now, those two matches would be like incredible. Like you said, Lufisto, she's great. She's fantastic. And Dean, he's one of the best. Like I always forget how long he's done it when I see him wrestle, especially when he's wrestling some of the younger guys, and it's as if he's the younger guy still keeping on top. And
It's unreal.
it's as if he's Benjamin Button just going like going the opposite way. And he's done some fantastic things. So hopefully, whether it's the UK or Dean going to Australia, that can happen.
Yeah, fingers crossed. It's I'm not sure how much money would be made on that sort of announcement, but for me personally, that'd be a phenomenal experience.
Yeah, definitely. So where can people find you on social media, and where can you find like some of your main companies that you're working for on social media?
So the big one for me, the main company is the Southern Hemisphere Wrestling Alliance. Another group I'm working with more is Explosive Pro Wrestling, both on Facebook mostly, a little bit on Instagram as well. Myself is Felix Young Wrestler on almost all social media except for Twitter because someone had that at some stage. So it's the Felix Young there, which is whatever. Yeah, just and YouTube's another good one. There's some free stuff out there for all the companies. Another place to check out all of the SHWA stuff is shwarewind.pivotshare.com. That's sort of our network, if you will.
Yeah.
And that's got a whole chunk of a couple of different companies. So that's definitely worth checking out as well.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you. But yeah, everybody go make sure you do check those companies out. Make sure you give Felix a follow at the Felix Young. And if you've enjoyed this, make sure you hit like, make sure you hit subscribe so you're not going to miss out on any of the other future interviews, and make sure you have a look through the playlist for some of my previous chats. Felix, thank you for coming on. Really enjoyed the chat and learning more specifically about the Perth wrestling scene. So thank you for that.
Hey, no worries. Thank you for having me. And thank you, Alexis Lee, for bringing it up too. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Alexis. So we'll definitely have to do it again, like down the road, once wrestling's back to some normality. It'll be interesting to see what the scene's like post-COVID. So we'll definitely have to get that chat arranged. And yeah, for those of you watching, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening.
Friday morning.